So you guys remember that character creation video I made the other month? You know, the one with the character that was created by polls that were made for you guys. I put out a bunch of polls on my channel, you guys all chose a bunch of adjectives, I took all those adjectives, sent them off to an artist, gave them absolutely no input, let them create a character, and then I had to make an entire backstory off them. It was a good, fun time, we enjoyed it a lot. I decided I wanted to do it again, but it didn't go exactly as I had planned this time, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What exactly is going on here? Well, I wanted to make another video where I let my viewers interact and create a character that I then had to make into a fully fledged NPC or PC. Things were a little different this time though. Rather than put the polls out on my channel, I actually put them out on my Patreon. Link in the description, wink wink nudge nudge, and let my patrons vote on it. Because of this, there was a much smaller pool of people voting, therefore there was a little bit more niche results, which is kind of what we were hoping for. Now, I didn't want to totally exclude all the rest of my subscribers from this process, so I decided to create a stream. We put up a live stream, I was just going to go through my process of how to create a character, and I was going to let the chat enjoy just a little bit of influence over the character. I got a little carried away, and we created something far more interesting. Now, the words that we were using for this specific character were Warlock, Simic Hybrid, City Watch / Investigator, Ludicrous, Chitin, and Purple. Already, we had some pretty amazing descriptive words that we were going to use, and so with this incredible list of words compiled, we tossed the artwork at an incredible artist at the Six of Wands. I promise once you guys see their art, they are amazing. You're going to want to go check them out. And they then took everything, set their mind to it, and created this. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I introduce you to the character art for this month's character creation. I went over it a lot in my stream, and the VOD for the stream is up on the channel, so if you want to go watch that, please don't hesitate to, but oh my god, the amount of amazing effort that was put into this artwork is incredible. I could not thank her enough, and honestly, I was absolutely amazed with what she managed to create with the words that we gave her. I mean, look at the pose. She took the word ludicrous and so perfectly nailed that there. The JoJo reference itself is also pretty incredible. And so obviously, this art alone had enough character, but it needed more. I had my own ideas, of course, but it wasn't just me this time, was it? The audience was there to help me, the chat, the stream. We had to create a hive mind to create the greatest NPC that had ever existed. Little did we know what our hubris, or to be honest, mainly my hubris, would rot. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't expect a ton of interaction from the stream, and was very pleasantly surprised with how many people were there. But little did I know the true force of nature that my stream was about to create. This is the saga of the myth, the legend, the non-binary dream with a smile that beams. New to streaming. Now, look, in the previous video, this would be where I would tell a story about the NPC, but for the sake of this, I have to tell the story at the end of the video. Why? Well, outside of watch time, you will have to see how this specimen, no, this variable demigod was created in the first place. We're going to start at the beginning, which opens with what all great stories do. A horribly humiliating mistake I fear I may never recover from. Hey guys, how's it going?
Son,
Okay, I have some very unfortunate news. I have been live, at least I thought I was, for the past, well, about 20 minutes. I legitimately didn't realize I hadn't hit the live button yet. And so I've just been sitting here talking, wondering why you guys are ignoring me. Literally just making a genuine fool of myself. I am so sorry. I've been nervous, rambling, being like, man, they're really just like not responding to me at all. I feel like I'm really messing something up. I'm so sorry. Yup. I streamed for almost 20 minutes with no one watching me because I forgot to hit live. Buckle up, everybody. This story does not get calmer from here. Regardless, once I really got into things started to go pretty smoothly. I mean, this was my first, well, second ever stream, and it wasn't going badly at all. So we started to poll the stream and get some ideas of what kind of character we wanted to create. As you can see, things were going fine, but I would accidentally start something here, at this exact moment, actually. Decided already. Let me see. I cannot stress enough how new I am to streaming. Now I know this seems like such a small moment, but I promise you, this was the tiny push that began to roll the snowball down the hill. And by the end of this, that single statement will define everything about this character. Don't believe me? Just watch. Regardless, with that heaping bowl of foreshadowing, at this point I ran into some accidental stream issues where my sound began to repeat itself. Because of this, I had to do some quick troubleshooting, and while I was away from the stream, something happened. Keep throwing the name. Okay, I'm gonna roll for stats here in a second, and I will figure out the name. Keep throwing your name ideas out there, and we're gonna parse through them real quick. Before I do that, though, I'm actually going to find where the source of that sound is, because I cannot go hearing my own voice this whole time. So we're gonna go ahead and be right back, and give me a second.
New to streaming. New to streaming. New to streaming. New to streaming. New to streaming.
A seemingly innocuous comment amongst a sea of other names. Surely, out of all the amazing names, this one would be lost, drowned in its own insignificance, right? Oh god. It was at this point that I recognized my folly. New to stream. Okay, I've seen that. I will put new to streaming in there. I feel like that may not. Okay, I see new to a lot. A lot of people are. Before I put that in there, I'm Googling new to streaming to make sure that this is not a pre-existing character that you guys are trying to bait me with. I'm really concerned with the amount of people who are saying new to. It's new to streaming. Oh, fuck you guys. Okay, you know what? It's really sad that it took me that long to get it, but I'm actually very impressed, so I'm gonna let you guys have that. New to streamin'? How had I missed this? Even worse, I had already put it in the poll, meaning that if it was voted on, what choice would I have? Would I truly go against the divine will of the chat and determine another name? Well, there was always hope. There was the hope that it wouldn't win out, right? Yeah. After all, it was just a joke name. There were plenty of other people excited for the name Estrella Azul. Yes, if I could just wait it out. Well, shockingly, new to streamin' is winning. New to streamin'. God. All right. Hey, what the fuck? I was trapped in this hell of my own creation. Well, mine and the YouTube chat, anyways. Well, with this setup, I would now be making a character known as New to Streamin', which was already quite the start. But we were getting a little ahead of ourselves. The name had been chosen, of course, but we still have to choose a subclass, modifiers, roll for stats, and of course, discuss the campaign setting. Now, I explained to the chat the purpose of this character was actually just to be universal. They were supposed to be able to be used as a player character or PC in pretty much any world, but I did offer them a brief explanation of my own campaign setting as I was discussing things. Just as, a general option in case they really needed a setting. It's totally fair, so I'm actually not putting it in a specific campaign. There's a high likelihood these characters will show up in my campaign. The campaign that I'm currently running is known as the Land of Tenedin. Basically, the best way to explain it is it was based very heavily off of Studio Ghibli and Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda. The concept is there was a massive plateau, or it's called the plateau, it's not really a plateau, but it was like a chunk of earth that rose into the air, and nobody has gone down to the surface for centuries. It is very Studio Ghibli-like. There's a lot of kind of very magical technology. Essentially lots of automatons, stuff like that, very similar to Breath of the Wild. I know that probably seems unimportant, but just as the minuscule name of New to Streamin', I promise, it is not. Regardless, we now had our character name, but a new wrench in the story began to develop. Already decided, has older sister named Estrella. Perfect. I refreshed the votes, and Estrella was only a few votes off of overtaking Newtu, but I had already named Newtu. That's right, we're making 2 characters now. Apparently. So, with this incredibly smooth operation going by with absolutely no wrinkles whatsoever, we began to nail down some of the finer details. Father is Seaman Streaman. Yes. I do think I was going insane, thank you for asking. Regardless, we were finally back on track and actually making the character. So, of course, I would accidentally toss in yet a new wrinkle that would absolutely derail this whole operation for like a second, third, fourth time? Who's keeping count? Yes, there is a very large lake. It's called Lake Levith. In fact, there is a massive mechanical axolotl that swims in there that nobody gets close to because it's far too dangerous. The axolotl, apparently, was a huge hit. It was so much of a hit, in fact, that the chat quickly decided that the packed boon had to be packed to the chain, and specifically, it needed to be an axolotl. So apparently, Nutu now has a pet baby axolotl. It was also at this point that it was revealed that the artist for the character art was actually in the stream and actively in the chat. They began to push the idea of a baby axolotl, and thus Alexander the axolotl was born. Though the Six of Wands was quite upset that I did not let them name it Perry. She even drew little art for him. Look at him go. It would also be at this point that I would drop a plot twist on the viewers. The Six of Wands is actually a player in one of my games, so who knows, maybe I'll give her a baby axolotl pet at one point. So armed with the multitude of various details the chat had chosen for this character, we then set to creating who they were, what their build was, and nailing down more of their backstory. Well, actually, that's not true. There was one more thing which occurred, which kind of feels relevant. Yeah, no, okay. Shepard said, can't wait for this video to be posted with something like the saga of Nutu, where it documents the chaos. Have you guys ever watched Doug? Because I would love to make a video like him documenting this, because this is this is great. So yeah, that's how this video happened. With the saga of Nutu finally fully documented, we get to the most important, most crucial portion of this tale. We have to meet the legend in the making that has us all quaking, the one, the only, Nutu Streaman. Along the muddy, blotchy path, a lone figure walks, each of their steps followed by a distinct squishing noise as the mud tries to cling to their feet as if it were trying to convince them to give up on their journey moving forward. Each step more mud gathered on their dirty leather boots, each movement causing their footsteps to only get heavier and heavier. They wanted nothing but to give in, to simply lay down on the side of the path in the middle of nowhere and let the dark roots of the many trees surrounding them grow over them and pull them underground over the years of time it would take. But that was years of time that they did not have. At least that would be a better fate than what awaited them if they were caught by their pursuer. The lone man shivered as he pulled a bit of dried leaves from the inside of his jacket and stuffed it into a long wooden pipe, making sure it was packed well before whispering a quick incantation and watching the leaves ignite from the arcane influence. It just had to be him, didn't it? The stranger muttered to himself with disdain laced in every single word. The only asshole who could chase me this far. He quickly looked over his shoulder, making certain that no one would be following him before picking up his pace, despite his desperately tired legs. It felt as if they could have given out at any moment, but he could not afford to stop. His hunter had been on his trail for days, and he had given up trying to hide his tracks. The maniac found any clue, no matter how small. At this point, his only hope was to outrun him long enough to be able to get somewhere that might be able to give him sanctuary. He just had to hope that sanctuary was actually possible. Lost in your thoughts, I see. The voice immediately shattered the man's delusion of safety as he began to desperately look through the trees, the light of the moon barely even enough to see a few feet in front of him. Chills ran down his spine and his breathing quickened as he started to move even faster. You're not here. There's no way you got up. He gasped as he trudged through the mud, feeling it grow thicker and thicker with every single step. Oh, come on now, you must know that it's not that easy to hide from Nutu. The voice rang out, seemingly coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. If you must know, Nutu didn't catch up. Nutu knew where you were going long before you did. There were only so many places you would try and hide, and this was the closest. Nutu, the voice came close enough that they could feel its hot breath on the back of their neck, has been waiting for you. Immediately, a scream erupted from the terrified man's mouth as he whirled around and drew a dagger, desperately trying to swing it where they believed Nutu to be, and yet as they pureed the air in front of them, they found nothing but the dark night. Get away from me, you fucking freak! Well, that's so rude. Nutu isn't doing anything wrong. A freak perhaps, but at least Nutu owns it. What do you do? Cower, run away, flee from the inevitable fate you are wrought while Nutu embraces it. Perhaps you've been caught because you weren't confident in who you were, or what you could do. We don't seem to share that weakness, now do we? Shut the fuck up. Just show yourself. I'll kill you. I swear I'll kill you. I'll rip you apart with my bare fucking hands. An ominous laughter rippled through the fog as the air in front of the man shimmered, slowly forming around a silhouette which stepped forwards, just enough light from the pipe to be able to illuminate its face. Oh, is that so? Well, here Nutu is. Don't prove yourself a liar. A grin split across their face, illuminating their sickeningly wide maw in the moonlight as they looked at their prey with a twisted spark in their eyes. They were not only confident in their actions. This thing was reveling in its hunt. For a moment, the man was frozen, unable to move. This thing had been chasing him for what felt like years, and now seeing it in front of him, he didn't know what to do, how to act, if he could do anything at all. Swallowing and gritting his teeth, he bolstered his resolve and felt the dagger in his hand clench even tighter. Fine! Die, you piece of shit! He was cut off as he lunged forwards, only to immediately watch the world around him warp and churn as Newtoo's laughs echoed in the darkness. Everywhere around him he could hear churning, whirling, charging water as if a whirlpool had erupted around him, and yet he could see nothing. The light, the trees, the dreaded creature, all gone as shadows enveloped everything in his vision. Its laughter, however, Newtoo's laughter, it was everywhere. Near, far, all around, it was like it was omnipresent as it pierced through the very skull and fractured the man's psyche. No, please, stop! He screamed into the endless void, falling to his knees and clutching his temples as sobs forcefully broke out of his chest. It's no mistake that Newtoo was hired to chase you, you know. Its voice continued to echo from every location possible. You have information that Newtoo needs. I'll tell you, please, I will tell you, I swear. Oh? That's so kind of you. Newtoo knew you just needed a little bit of motivation. Suddenly, out of the darkness, Newtoo's form appeared as they loomed over the man, the same horrifying grin plastered on their face. I'll make this quick then. Where is Estrella? The man froze, momentarily feeling confusion overtake his terror. The girl? The one who controls the genie? I don't know. She was taken by the Duke. The Duke wanted her. Newtoo's eyes flashed with a dangerous malice as they leaned even closer. The Duke? How odd. Where did the Duke take her? To Mount Dahl. He claimed he had a purpose for her there. Please, I swear, that's all I know. Newtoo leaned back, seemingly deep in thought before looking down at the quivering creature in front of them and raising an eyebrow as the ever-present grin on their face remained. Oh, don't worry. Newtoo believes you. There's no more need for you. The man's face immediately flooded with more tears of relief as he fell to the ground in a groveling position. Thank you. Thank you. I swear I will never harm you again. Oh, don't worry. I believe that. Newtoo murmured as they snapped, the water around them beginning to seep into the ground and vanish as the moonlight finally returned to the world. The problem is, I'm making sure you never harm her again. The man's face fell as he tried to scramble up to run while Newtoo turned their back to him and walked away, but it was far too late. With another snap, the ground began to literally open up underneath them, splitting in two as water began to run in from all sides like a vortex. The man screamed, but it was heard on deaf ears as the roar of the cold, emotionless waters tore him from the ground and sucked him underneath. In mere moments, the water was gone, and so was the man. Nothing but the mud left where he was. I'll find you, Estrella, Newtoo murmured through clenched teeth before another wide grin began to overtake their expression. Newtoo always finds who they're looking for. So, Newtoo streaming. Obviously, this started out as a bit of a joke character. When we started the stream and we started creating them, I immediately was kind of apprehensive, but I wanted to roll with things because I really thought that this character could be a labor of love from my community, a love letter from me to them. I really wanted them to know that I was very excited to be able to create this character, and the more that we did it, the more I was just having fun. But I realized that I could also make this a pretty legitimately fun and legitimately intimidating character, so we decided to roll with it and just have some fun. And I'm super glad that we did. And I'm really, really glad that I got to document the whole experience and share it with you guys. But let's talk about the character now. Newtoo. Strange name aside, I do think Newtoo could be a legitimately fun character in your campaigns, whether as a player character, an NPC, etc. Now, it did end up being a little setting specific, but with a little bit of tweaking, you can pretty much make sure that they go into pretty much any setting that you want. And here's the deal. Newtoo's backstory is interesting because it is intrinsically tied with his sister Estrella. Over the course of the stream, we decided that Estrella and Newtoo would both be warlocks, and they would both have very similar patrons. Estrella would have a patron of the genie. A genie patron, specifically a Maritz, I messed that up in the stream too, but specifically a Marid, so that she would also have water-based powers. Newtoo, on the other hand, would have a patron of the Fathom. They would be intrinsically tied together, but not quite the same. Not the same patron, but similar. And the idea was that these two patrons were actually connected to each other and trying to help each other. So here's the backstory that I've developed with a lot of help from the stream and the different details they tossed my way. Newtoo and Estrella were very young children, and they were able to grow up together with a relatively close bond. They lived in a fairly large family, but on the plateau, and yes, we are still keeping the plateau as the setting for this for the meantime, on the plateau, larger families didn't typically do well. You didn't have enough resources to maintain that many people in a small area, and so eventually the two of them twins, decided to head off on their own. Now, Estrella is the older of the two, not by any type of time, of course, but instead in the way that she acts. She was much more responsible and she had a lot of burden on her back. Her parents constantly expected her to be the one to take care of her siblings while they were out hunting and getting food. And because of that, she had a self-inflated worth. She really considered herself to be the most responsible, even though she didn't want to be. Meanwhile, Nutu was a much younger and more rambunctious and free child. None of the responsibility was placed on Nutu as a child, somewhat unfairly by their parents, and so Nutu was able to do whatever they wanted. They were able to go out into the world, they were able to explore, they were able to get into danger, and Estrella would always have to save them. This created a close bond between the two, but also some resentment. Nutu always resented Estrella because Estrella was trusted by her parents and Nutu was not. That really got to them and caused them to really have a sort of anger towards Estrella. Meanwhile, Estrella was upset because Nutu got to be who they wanted to be without all that responsibility placed upon them. These two conflicting ideals would cause them to grow closer and closer together while still having a very intense rivalry with each other. And eventually, it would culminate to them traveling to Lake Levith, a large lake in the middle of the plateau and one of the largest sources of water, magically filled even though nobody knew how because rain never came, so where did the water come from? They went to the lake and they traveled in and they began to swim further and further out. It began to become a competition. Who could swim further? Estrella could swim further, but then Nutu would catch up, but then Estrella would go further, over and over and over again. Eventually, they were so enraptured in their entire competition, they never realized how far out they had gone. And when they turned around, they realized they could no longer see the shore. This is a massive lake and they were lost. They didn't know what to do. They started to swim further and further, but the lake began to defy the laws of physics. There was no end in sight. There was no possible way to escape. And so they began to drown. As they began to drown, Estrella went first, and Nutu dove after her, terrified, not wanting their sister to die. They began to swim further and further down in the lake, searching for her, trying to find her as she was drowning. Began to panic and go further and further and further until finally they felt their own lungs begin to break. As they felt the water going in, they closed their eyes and they shouted out for Estrella one last time. And a different creature answered. See, both of them were at the bottom of the lake, connected to two different entities. Two powerful creatures that had been trapped at the bottom of the lake, fated to never be able to see each other again. One was a genie, one a leviathan. Both in love with each other, but had been trapped for so long they could never touch each other. But as the bond of the siblings trying to connect to each other was at their absolute strongest, the two were able to connect with these patrons who wanted to connect to each other. And as such, two warlock packs were founded that day. Now the two of them grew up together, and with their powers they began to become somewhat famous on the plateau, doing good and traveling around and trying to find a way to be able to free their patrons so that the two could love each other once again. It was a nice, unique sibling bond, but eventually they would be separated. Though Nutu has since scrubbed the memory from their mind, somehow they were trapped in some strange laboratory. It was unusual, dark, there were strange futuristic machines everywhere they had never seen before, and something horrible happened to Nutu. They were torn apart, remade. Their body was changed in ways that they didn't understand, and when they woke up, Estrella was gone, and they had different abilities that they hadn't had before. Going out into the world, they want to find Estrella and connect with their sibling once again, but they have no clue where they've gone, and as such, Nutu's on a never-ending quest to find Estrella and is using their ability and unique skills of tracking people down, honed over the years of trying to find their sister, to be able to track down those who have knowledge of Estrella to be reunited with this sibling once again. But as time goes on, they begin to become more and more afraid that Estrella might be trying to hide or does not want to be found by them. I left Nutu's backstory generally vague because there needs to be the ability to change things around. You could pretty easily swap any of the patrons or any of the ways that they got their packs with the patron, but the main core part of it is Nutu has a sibling which they very much love and they are looking for. Nutu was a simic hybrid, so they were changed at one point, and in the point of them being changed is when they lost their sibling. And this way you can create this very bold and loud character who's very good at tracking people down and can easily be inserted in campaigns as a helpful NPC. Chaotic, to be certain, and a little evil at times. But the main thing is they just want to be able to find their sister, and they're willing to help anybody else out who is trying to find somebody. There are so many backstories for player characters out there who are trying to find an important NPC from their backstory, and Nutu is a perfect insert for this. A ruthless hunter, a powerful killer, and somebody who is constantly willing to find who they're looking for. So they would be willing to help a player character who has a similar plight to them. Now with all that being said, Nutu's build is interesting. We specifically went for a very water-themed build, and we kind of of tossed a lot of the mechanics out in order to get a lot of flavor in. We really wanted to nail down that water. And so as a Pact of the Fathomless, obviously they have really good swimming speed. And we also granted them a Manta Glide and the Carapace ability to be able to just really nail down that aquatic creature of terror. As we went further in, we wanted to give them more and more abilities, and so we really settled on a lot of the mystic arcanums that warlocks get at higher levels. Things like maddening darkness being flavored as a giant dark whirlpool of terror surrounding somebody. You saw that in the story. You also saw Nutu's 9th level spell, which is imprisonment. A strange spell and typically a plot device, not one taken by player characters, but it made a lot of sense for somebody who's trying so hard to track people down. They want to be able to find Estrella, but they do not want anybody with knowledge of Estrella to share that knowledge with others, as it could put her in further danger. And thus, they track somebody down, they gain the knowledge, and they imprison them for eternity. Nutu is not necessarily a good aligned character. They're fairly chaotic and a little bit evil, but ultimately they just want to help those who have lost other people. And it can be a really fun adventure hook if your players keep finding out about people magically disappearing and never being found again. Nutu keeps finding people and imprisoning them. And Nutu can then create a pretty interesting antagonist or anti-villain. The point is they can be used as a force in the world, not necessarily intrinsically tied to the plot, but to show that the world is enveloped and moving and evolving. It makes things more exciting because you know that the world is moving without you, and therefore, as a player character, there's more to explore. I really like this character, and while they did start out as kind of a joke character, I mean, I didn't even find a way to mention Alexander the Axolotl outside of a little bit of a brief mention. Frankly, I really like this character. I think they could have a lot of flavor, and if you play them bombastic and crazy and cold-hearted on the inside, if you really dig down, but just this very unique individual of webbed hands and purple chitin all over them and a large smile, bombastic personality, and an axolotl on their shoulder, I think it really works well and can create a very interesting and fun time. And so while it was a little bit setting specific, I think it's totally fine to be able to put this in other campaigns, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Go out into the world, make it your own. Don't forget to have a great day, and never forget to play your role. A huge shout out to all those divine bastards over on our Patreon that helped make this video happen. I'd also like to take an additional very personal thank you to BKBW, Diet Blue, Duplicolor, Malcadil, I hope I pronounced that right, Sassy Cat Productions, Sorit, Supreme Court, Tin Eye, and Void Mystic. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without our patrons, and we are very thankful for your continued support. You guys are the absolute best, and I will never take your support for granted.